Before I get started with the sermon today, I want to let you know that you are now my favorite members of Crossroads. Because when a pastor wakes up on the 4th of July and wonders who's coming to church, they can only count so high. And so here you are celebrating Independence Day with me, and I'm so thankful for that. Here's my best advice for you on the 4th of July. No matter how much you like fireworks, let someone else set them off for you. Every 4th of July, I see those stories of another person blowing their hand off, and I just don't see how it's worth it. You just let the professionals do it. You go into ooh and ah and let your hands remain intact for the 5th of July, which is also an important day. I did see my new all-time favorite 4th of July joke yesterday. I probably shouldn't keep going with my jokes, but hopefully you think this is as funny as I did. So in Europe right now, they're playing what's called the European Championships in soccer. So every nation has a team, and they're playing against each other, trying to decide who the champion of Europe is. And yesterday, England is like a perpetual fall short. So if you don't know anything about soccer, they're always good, they never win. Always good, never win. And so they had a quarterfinal game yesterday trying to get into the Final Four of all of Europe. And they were very nervous about it, and they ended up beating Ukraine 4-0. I mean, just an absolute whooping of this other country to end up in the semifinal. And I saw an American person write, I don't see why England should be so surprised. They should be used to things going just fine on July 3rd. So that's my all-time new favorite 4th of July joke. So anyways, happy holiday to you. I hope you enjoy yourself today. And again, I also hope I don't have to visit any of you in the emergency room tonight. So heed my advice. We've been walking through the Gospel of John. And in the Gospel of John, there are 7 times that Jesus says, I am, fill in the blank, I am something. And of course, this is a hearkening back to the Old Testament where God declares himself to Moses by naming himself, I am. And Jesus is embodying the God of the Exodus, now for the sake of people. He has become incarnate. He is man. He is living a human life like you and I, and he is demonstrating to the world how God is and who God always has been. Now, last week, we talked about one that's really connected to this week. In fact, it's all in the same long paragraph. Last week, I am the gate for the sheep, and today, I am the good shepherd. And I think for those of us who have been raised in church for a long time, we may have a sense of what shepherds look like. But in a modern, urban world that we live in, it's kind of hard to imagine what a shepherd does. In fact, as much as I feel like I know what a shepherd does, in fact, the word pastor literally comes from shepherd. Shepherds do pastoral work. And so this is a metaphor that matters in the Christian church. I actually had to look up and think this week about, okay, I know what a shepherd does, but how does a shepherd live? How does a shepherd even make money? Why would you choose shepherding? And so I actually found a video. It's kind of like in documentary format of a modern shepherd. This is not King David in the fields, okay? This is someone shepherding today who left the city to go shepherd. And he talks just a little bit of what that life is like, and he connects it to his relationship with God. And so just to get us in the mindset of what shepherding looks like, I want you to watch this. I mean, it's just a couple minutes long, a very short documentary on someone who became a shepherd out of trouble in the urban life. Check this out.
There's a saying where I'm from that one healthy family can influence 12 others. This saying has been motivation for me since the first day I arrived in this village. Growing up, I had never seen a village with my own eyes. So when God moved my family out of the city into this village, I felt like a foreigner in a foreign land. When I arrived, I asked myself, how do people live and what do they do for a living? Most of the people are shepherds or farmers. And so to make a living, I've learned how to raise a sheep. I choose to buy the skinny, weak sheep, the ones nobody wants. I take them home, heal them, and make them strong. Being a shepherd has given me better understanding of man and of God. I have seen that sheep are truly social creatures. Every sheep needs a herd. People are the same. They need to be surrounded by a strong community. My sheep are dependent on me for constant water and food, just as I am dependent on God to provide for all my needs. What is a sheep without a shepherd? It's lost. In my village, there are many problems. Families in my community struggle with the alcohol addiction, domestic abuse, and broken homes. These are problems that can't be solved by themselves. They can only be solved with God's help. I believe that my simple task as someone's neighbor is to lead them to something that can help them with their problems. Here, it is not popular to go to church. In my church, men have lost their teeth because of their faith. My biggest fear is that one day I will lose heart and give up. But I pray that God will give me perseverance and opportunities with my neighbors. The other day, my neighbor came to me needing help to heal his sheep. I was able to share with him Psalm 23, saying that God is our shepherd. We are his sheep. He looks after us, and we can trust him. Today, a neighbor brought us a watermelon, and I was reminded how God provides. Though I once felt like a foreigner here, now I feel like a neighbor among neighbors. I can say that with God's help, I'm now a villager.
I love that story, and I love seeing all the ruralness and all this kind of stuff, but the part of that video that gets me is that he somehow has access to medicine in syringes. That was wild. But anyways, great story. And it's a reminder, his line that was really impactful to me is that sheep need a shepherd. Sheep need a shepherd. And they absolutely do, because they are not the smartest animal in the flock or in all of the animal kingdom. They are nomadic animals. They need to move from field to field in order to survive, because if they're left in one field, they will chew all of the grass and vegetation before it can regrow again. They need to move from place to place. And in order to move from place to place, they need an organizer, because there will not be a sheep who rises up to the top and says, I know a guy who has a field 2 miles away, we can go graze there. They're not smart enough for this. They need someone who can scout out. Furthermore, they cannot protect themselves. They are just simply fluffy winter coat factories, right? At no point will there be a dangerous ninja sheep that has a heavy artillery. They aren't smart enough to find their own place. They aren't strong enough to protect themselves. Sheep need a shepherd. And last week we talked about that Jesus says, I am the gate for the sheep. That he goes to the sheep and opens up for them an opportunity to walk into a pasture that is eternal, a place of rest that will last forever, that will be a reprieve from the hard life of this world. And today, Jesus doesn't say that he's simply the gate as if he's only an opener. But he carries on to say something different as well. I am the good shepherd. Which is to say, he looks upon us and he says, I will lead you. I won't simply hope that you find the gate to get in, but I will come to you and I will draw you towards the gate. Salvation is eternal, it is for you, and you don't have to scurry to find it. I will come to you and I will lead you to the place of salvation. Last week we read the first 10 verses of chapter 10. Today we're going to read the next 11. We're going to be looking from verse 11 to verse 21 in chapter 10 of the Gospel of John, carrying on right where we left off last week. And I invite you, if you would you join me in standing as we read the word of the Lord today? John chapter 10, starting in verse 11. This is Jesus speaking. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are also not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. The Jews who heard these words were again divided. Many of them said, he is demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him? But others said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. I am the good shepherd. It is an appropriate metaphor for the time and place where Jesus lives. The Middle East has a perfect climate and an economy ripe for shepherds. At this place in time, there were many shepherds. And in the history of Israel, there were many, many more shepherds. You know that in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. There is an idea already in Israel that God is the shepherd of the nation and the people of Israel. It is deeply appropriate also to remember that the best king, the king that people longed for to return, the king that people hoped the Messiah would look like when he came, was a shepherd when he was called into the kingship of Israel, that being King David. King David was a great shepherd. Not only did he protect his sheep, he was famous for running off lions and predators, but he also protected Israel from the greatest predator they ever saw, Goliath. David was a shepherd through and through. The people of Israel longed for a leader that looked like a shepherd, someone who loved them, whose voice came to them and was known and soothed them and loved them, but also protected them from outside threats. The people of Israel longed for a shepherd. And so the idea that Jesus would enter into this vocation, this calling, this understanding of God, this longing of Israel, and say, I am the good shepherd, should be of no surprise whatsoever. Jesus here is embodying the hopes of Israel while also describing the work that God does. He is the embodiment of this work. He longs for us to know his name, because he says those who know his name listen to his voice and they follow him. He looks out upon a people who are divided and unsure what to do with him. All this stuff sounds good, but at the same time, the Pharisees are saying that he's possessed by a demon. But look what he's doing. He's healing people. He's making people who are blind see. He's preaching a message of hope, of restoration, of salvation, of protection. I long for a piece of that. And Jesus says, if you hear my voice, you will trust me like a shepherd and you will follow me. He talks about another way of shepherding. If you got a little too big for your britches and you had multiple little shepherd enterprises across a plain, you might not be able to watch all of your sheep. And so you would go into town and find someone who doesn't have a family business, maybe a young boy, and you would make an agreement with him. You would put cash out on the table and say, hey, for this many dollars or whatever, you watch my sheep. And there'd be an agreement. They would watch the sheep. They would protect the sheep. They would move the sheep from pasture to pasture because sheep need a shepherd. But Jesus says these kind of hired hands, these people who come and go, these people who seem charismatic, they're just in it for the paycheck. As soon as real danger comes, as soon as a real predator, a real threat happens, they will bail because they love the paycheck, not the sheep. This is the way hired hands work, no doubt. And Jesus here is scandalizing the Pharisees, the would-be messiahs, the charismatic political leaders of this time. They come and they want the notoriety. They want the following. They want people to look up to them, but just as soon as there is danger, as soon as there is trouble, they skedaddle. Jesus says, I'm with you in the fight. When threats rise up, when trouble comes, if you follow me, if you make me your shepherd, when life is too much, when you hurt, when you're afraid, when the threats are dangerous and real and violent, Jesus says, I will lay down my life for you. I will protect you with my very own life because I am a good shepherd for you. This argument is compelling, that Jesus isn't just a charismatic leader who provides incredible miracles and signs and wonders, but that his very body and blood are on the line. He cares about you so much that he is not just another voice among many to follow. But if you choose to follow his life, you have a leader who will give his life that you would be spared and be given life yourself. The text here ends with this debate that's happening on the ground of the countryside of Israel in this day. And the question remains for us today, when you're presented with Jesus, what do you do with him? Is your mind made up that he is the good shepherd, the Messiah, the Son of God, the embodiment of God's very heart for the sake of the world? Is your mind made up that that's who Jesus is, that he is who he says he is? Or is he just another in a line of prophets, teachers, healers, charismatic men? Is he who he says he is? Or is he raving mad? This question brought conflict, to say the least, in his time. And it brings conflict to our world as well. Nations, neighborhoods, families are divided over what to do about Jesus. And finally, this decision is ours. We have to make a decision about Jesus. There is no standing on the fence. There is no wondering. He is either the Messiah, the Son of God, the pre-existent Savior, come to live and dwell amongst us, that he would die on our behalf as he says he is, or he is not. Choosing is imperative for us. We must make a decision. And what's fascinating about this metaphor is that it's such a compelling invitation. So many of the other I am statements that we're going to talk about, sure, we have to make a decision about Jesus in them, but in those, they're much more theological, much more about the nature of God, a sense of this big, awesome creator God who has come to live and dwell amongst us. He says, I'm the resurrection of the life. I am the bread of life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. These are theological concepts, an idea of the big God come near. When Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd, it's a very different statement than those other ones. Those are theological. This one is relational. This is about a God who wants to be in relationship with us. The other ones, we get an idea of who God is. Jesus is revealing to us who God is. And there's something beautiful and wonderful about that. In this one, Jesus is telling us who he is to us. What the relationship of God is like for us. Who God wants to be in our life. You see, just theological categories. Well, I follow God because he's the life or the way. Yeah, okay, absolutely you should, but what does that mean? When Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd, we can start really teasing that out in much more easy ways. It is a relationship. And Jesus spells it out as well. I want you to know my voice. I want you to follow me. I want you to go with me wherever I go. I want you to trust me. I want you to go from pasture to pasture to pasture with me. I want you to trust me with your future. When I call you into it, I will be there. Shepherds do not abandon their sheep. And Jesus lays it down and says, here's my end of the bargain. You follow me, and I will lay my life down for you. I will protect you with my very blood if you're willing to follow me. Following Jesus can be a terrifying proposition. There are so many things in this world. There are so many relationships that we have. There are so many situations that we have that are asking us to follow and trust it or them, right? Just in our own life, we might have a job that asks us to follow and trust it. We might have parents who have made us up and move many times. We have sports teams that we have allegiances to that have given us ups and downs in our lives. And sometimes we've even traveled to see them, right? We've had girlfriends and boyfriends that we chase around. We have kids. If you have kids, they are always making you chase them around. We've chased money, we've chased dreams, we've chased adventure. We've had boredom and insecurity move us and make us make moves. All of these things have a voice that speak into our life, asking us to be and do something. And sometimes the things that it asks us to be and do are big moves. And here's the thing that's wild. We trust those voices. We're very good at trusting our boredom. We're very good at trusting our job. We're very good at trusting that girl we hope is our wife someday, or that wife that we have now. We're very good about trusting these other voices in our life that they are for our good, that trusting and following them is for our good. And we struggle all too often to put our full trust in Jesus. Jesus calls us to things that seem absurd and crazy. They bring anxiety and nerves and fear. What is next, Jesus? Where are you bringing me? Where are you taking me? What am I going to do if I have to do this thing you're asking me to do? It is scary to trust Jesus. But all of the things we trust, all the stories, all the voices in our lives that we give our life for, none of them offer what Jesus offers. And that is, I am the good shepherd. I am leading you to your safety, and I will lay down my life to make sure you get there. Very few entities or people or groups will offer their own blood for your safety and security. But this is who Jesus is. This is who Jesus wants to be in your life. This is what a good shepherd does. But again, if we could just confess for a moment, It's hard in this metaphor to be the sheep. In fact, I've noticed more and more and more, the more news I watch, the more Twitter I read, it's become a popular insult to call people sheep. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're a Christian, you probably shouldn't be calling people sheep because Jesus calls you a sheep and that seems okay, right? Sheep, we are sheep. It's hard to be sheep in the metaphor, but we do not see near as clearly as we like to believe that we do. I'm always reminded of the Apostle Paul talking in the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians about love, about how we see but a reflection in a mirror. And one day we will see face to face, but for now, we see but a reflection. We are not as smart. We are not as clear-eyed. We are not as visionary as we like to think we are. This is why we must put our trust in Jesus. He sees around the bends in ways that we don't. He knows where the next pasture for our lying and our rest lay. But being a sheep is hard because we have little agency when the shepherd is speaking. We either follow or we get lost. We either follow in trust and find that it is good to follow the shepherd, or we become obstinate and get left behind. I have a quick little drone video that I want to show you that shows sheep getting led through a pasture. And you can see just how on the brink it is from chaos at all times. There's always like 5 or 6 sheep that look like they're about to get lost all the time. But there's also a beauty to the migration patterns of a sheep that are willing to follow. There is such beauty to this. If you will ignore the fear of seeing the few sheep that are almost lost, you'll see they're always caught up and they always make it to their place. Watch this quick drone video of sheep migration patterns. Did you see those bozo sheep that I was talking about? I have to confess that all too often I'm the bozo sheep, right? And part of the problem is that if Jesus is the good shepherd, he is the shepherd. And I'm not a special sheep. I'm just as likely to veer off and try to do my own thing. I'm just as needy of knowing Jesus' voice for him to say, Tim, over here, this is where we're going. It's easy to be the bozo sheep. It's hard to know the voice of Jesus. It's hard to trust that he always has the best for us. What we do have is a history of a good shepherd who works miracles in our lives. We have a history of a good shepherd who has led us through trouble before. We have history of a good shepherd who has taken care of us no matter what his ask of us has been before. But just because he got me safely across the road last week, it still takes faith to go across the road again this week. The places that the Good Shepherd calls us to can be terrifying because we don't always see it. We are left with faith, with trust, with belief. And who knows what it is that Jesus is calling you to? Could be into new pastures, new jobs, new callings, a new home, a new friend, a new person to mentor, a new neighbor to go talk to, a new family member to go witness to. Jesus calls us into difficult things. His shepherding isn't always easy. Sometimes we go through the valley of the shadow of death. Sometimes we pass by wolves. Sometimes the destination is so profoundly unknown. But Jesus is the good shepherd who works it all out for good on our behalf. He is leading us by still water, even when he could lead us by much more dangerous places. And the pasture to which he leads us to is good, and it's eternal, and it's restful. He is the good shepherd. And today we celebrate together his laying down his life for us. Jesus doesn't just say this as a metaphor here, I would lay my life down, but he does lay his life down. And in particular, the wolf in this situation for Jesus is the sin and evil, all of the chaos of hell that can be thrown at us has come at Jesus with all of the power that it has. It wants to kill Jesus. And Jesus does not fight. He lays down his life that it might focus on him. And when sin and evil and death and hell attack Jesus, they think the battle is won. Jesus bleeds and dies on the cross, and all of hell celebrates. But in 3 days, we find that he lays down his life on our behalf, that he might pick it back up again and invite us into a new, radical, eternal life that is not afraid of sin, death, or hell. Instead, follows him through the grave into eternal life, that we might have it also. This is the work of the Good Shepherd. And the work is for you. He lays his life down for you, that you might know his voice, receive his grace, and find that you can live with him forever.